Thank you, Jeff. Let's go to Senator Mike Hall, Chairman of Senate Finance. You might already know this, Senator Hall, or are we giving you some news here this morning?
On the Senate Bill 641?
Yeah, on dog racing.
No, that's not news. I knew that. I talked to the chairman last night and got the impression that he would put that in a study. And, you know, to briefly talk about that before you get to the budget real quickly,
yep.
The dog money, the horse money, the public should know that that's not coming from their taxes. It's not even coming from their ordinary lottery playing when they play Powerball or whatever. Years ago, and that was put in motion to take money off of the casino floor,
right,
by a formula to fund those things. And that was part of the original arrangement, that the casinos would basically be forced to fund these activities, horse racing and dog racing, through the funds and so forth. And so that's where that money is. When we say, let's take the money, well, the first thing I would say, and some would object to this, but I think we should prospectively remember that this money is coming out of that. It's self-contained within the casino activity.
Right.
Now, some argue we'll take it anyway because the casinos have a monopoly or whatever. So I think, you know, in terms of this thing, it does have some economic impact one way or another. I do think that we did not, you know, we've tried to delve into this thing for a year. Last year, you know, I was wanting to take a real close look at it. Unfortunately, I did go through a surgery, and I just was sort of off the shelf most of the year. But this year, I believe it's wise, but we have to do this. We have to go in and say, all right, what are the moving parts? Because this lottery statute is so complicated.
Yes, it is.
It took a long time to try to unravel it, and as soon as you unravel one thing, you do something else.
Well, let me interrupt, Senator. Let me interrupt you a second. Senator Mike Hall's with us, Chairman of Senate Finance. Does this mean that, in your opinion, with the days winding down, that the subsidies, I still call them subsidies for convenience, of the dog racing industry will remain, and dog racing will remain in West Virginia? Or does this mean that there still will be an attempt to remove those subsidies, which will be the end of dog racing? Which will it be?
I don't think it will happen. The subsidies will not be. Well, when you say subsidies, I would say it's subsidies, but it's subsidies basically from the casino.
Yeah. Okay.
Floor.
Well, then let's say
the public believes that their tax dollars are subsidizing these dogs, and it's not.
Well, if the legislation were approved to remove these, again, subsidies, it would mean that money would go into the general fund, so it would pay for other things. I guess what I'm getting at is,
no, it won't go to the general fund. It would go into the excess lottery account.
Okay. Well,
we'll make its way, or go into the lottery accounts. But I know we can talk about that. And yes, we want to wind these activities down. But I know probably. But it's more difficult to do this in terms of the legislation and litigation and there's still referendum. There's all kinds of.
So dog racing is going to survive at least another year.
Well, you know, unless these bills are activated and dealt with in a subsequent special session, which could happen, I don't know. But yeah, because there's a lot of pressure to try to figure this whole thing out. One of these tracks wants to get rid of dog racing more than the other one. The other two want to keep the horse racing, one more than the other one, and it's like I've had all the special interest in the room from all these different tracks, and it's interesting when you propose one thing to one, the other three object.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Quite a thing. I mean,
it's a whack-a-mole. You move one thing, it moves three other things,
exactly,
or Rubik's Cube.
And that's true in the bill itself. So we are going to look at taking the modernization money, the $9 million. That will probably do. And, that could become the basis, though, before the end of the session, a vehicle to deal with this. So I'm not going to say it won't be dealt with by this session.
Okay, so it's still possible.
It's still got a possibility of some, if we can get to the yes on some of these things.
Okay, so dog racing is the money, and again, I call them subsidies, but the money that the casinos put into the breeders' fund and to the purse. For the moment, that's going to survive. For the moment, although things.
There was a lot of interest, or we wouldn't have introduced these bills to try to do that.
Yeah.
The bill that I introduced actually did that.
I don't.
run into all kinds of things.
Well, I know you have. I don't know why, and I'm going to hear it from the dog people. I just don't know why we continue to prop up that absolutely just failing industry. But that's
well. It'd probably be an hour to really explain all that.
well, real quick.
And you don't have an hour. It's really in the weeds.
You don't have an hour either. So, but real quick on the budget. I mean, we got an impasse here, Senator. The Senate had a balanced budget, although it raised a lot of revenue that the House never had a chance in the House. The governor says he's not going to keep lawmakers around for too long if they can't get somewhere. The House can't even approve 45-cent increase in the cigarette tax. Where in the world is this thing headed?
Well, first of all, I respect the honorable members of the House of Delegates and their campaigns and representing their districts, and a lot of them do not feel like that they can vote for tax increases. But if we could get to, I think, one proposal that's actually been proposed, I think the mayor of Charleston said this on a local show, but a lot of them have talked about this. A 1% sales tax increase for 1 or 2 years could get us over the hump while, quote, we reorganize government, as the chairman of finance in the House has said, and I agree with him. There's things to look at. Process these pretty severe cuts. We're down to the level now that cutting further probably has to be processed out because of what will change. Otherwise, what we're going to have to use is the Revenue Shortfall Reserve Fund, which the code actually says is for revenue shortfalls,
right?
Which is what we've got. And, the governor seems to indicate that he didn't want us to go there. So though that enactment years ago was for this very purpose, that's where we're headed in terms of our budget. Once, we'll meet in conference and decide what cuts. The House is going to do some. We basically supported the governor's budget with a few changes. I think over there they've got some changes, but they're pretty much funding with either cash accounts and rainy day fund, and we'll get to conference and we'll produce a budget that's pretty well balanced based on cash and rainy day. And I think the governor doesn't want to go there. I kind of understand for one good reason. We want to keep our bond rating stable, and if we can't show, I don't know the right word, a commitment, I guess, we can get through our political process and people doing what they got to do for their districts. We need a structurally sound budget. Structurally sound means we cut it down to where this is all we're going to spend and this is all the revenue we've got. Or if we're going to spend more money, we'll have to raise revenue. We need a structurally sound budget. He probably believes just dipping deeply into the rainy day fund again after the $50 million this year is pointing to a non-structurally sound budget. So the hard work ahead, now that this 60 days is over with, focusing on several good things, is to focus now probably getting on the structurally sound budget. I will say one further thing.
Yeah.
This year's revenue is also collapsing. The $350 million may not be right. It may be more than that. We maybe have to be back here in May to see where we are financially in the state.
Yeah.
So we have to have a balanced budget by the end of the year. We'll have one funded with probably a lot of cash and rainy day. He may not accept that. I could see possibly somewhere later in the year, but before the end of the fiscal year, which is 1st of July,
Senator,
we get together with the budget.
Senator, just fine. Let me come back to dogs for 1 second. So I believe that because there's a House version, there's a Senate version, and not to belabor this point, but does that mean that the House bill because the House just blew up the Senate bill today, that the House bill that would take away the subsidies to the dog racing industry and probably mean the end of dog racing, which is in your committee right now, that you will or will not take up that bill?
Well, I probably won't. There's a problem with the decoupling issue. You have to do that. And that bill does not decouple, and we think we're at an impasse on that because I believe that if you don't decouple, then you create a problem where you've unfunded something that the tracks can no longer afford to do, but you're forcing them to do it.
Right, and the decoupling, by statute, the track has to have racing, so that's what the decoupling is about.
And so particularly the wheeling track, the person that runs wheeling has been here and pretty much, unless we would cut their tax rate, he said, basically if we could agree to cut their tax rate a little bit, then we could do this. We could do it by the end of this session. But they've warranted that their survival up there, and the people who represent that area have indicated to be the case, that the way my bill is positioned, that track particularly may not, it would be really problematic. So, but, we're not done with this. We do have these bills in our possession, and we do have a bill that we can put, if we get to an agreement on this, that we can put in that bill and get it out of here by Saturday night. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm just saying that it's far more complex. I wish it was very simple to do. It'd be real. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I know, and I know it is complicated. Senator Mike Hall, we appreciate it. Good talking to you. I know you're busy. Thank you very much.